So, Paul, on a scale of whatever rating system you choose, how would you rate the original Mortal Kombat game?
I would honestly give it the rare 10 out of 10.
Really?
I would.
Well, that's irrelevant because we're actually talking about the movie today.
Oh.
So, Mortal Kombat came out in 1995. I actually saw it in theaters. I think I saw it in theaters twice, actually, because I know people remember it as being this, like, a bad movie, and I can't really say it was, like, great, but it kind of was great. Like, it was awesome. I thought at the time watching it as, like, a 15 or 16-year-old kid.
I was pumped on it as well. I saw it on, shortly after it came out in the theaters, I saw it on VHS, which for you kids out there listening, and we know there's a lot of them, that's old for DVD, which is old for Blu-ray. Which is old for a download. All right. Anyway, I seen it back then. Let's say basically when it came out, give or take a year or three, and I loved it. It was everything I wanted it to be. It didn't try and be something it wasn't.
Yeah, there was something about it that just really hit a fine balance between not being too silly the way Street Fighter the movie did, but it also kind of didn't take itself seriously and allowed itself to sort of make fun, to kind of self-deprecate a little bit every now and then, but still kind of took it seriously and just pretty much just wanted to be a fun 90s action movie, and it kind of did that.
Yes, yeah, it was reminding me of almost like a more violent, obviously Ninja Turtles movie of the day. You know, like you said, it was just fun. The costumes were fun, realistic enough, but didn't take itself seriously.
Yeah, I can agree to that. I think I think there's a little bit of a darker tone to the original Ninja Turtles movie, but Mortal Kombat it came from that era of the 90s where they just kind of wanted to make really cool action movies, and that's kind of the only time. I think it was Paul W.S. Anderson who made this one, and that's kind of when he really got to shine, because he made a bunch of mixed results video game adaptations, like the some of the Resident Evil movies, at least the first one. And I think he did Event Horizon, so that was actually pretty good too. But kind of he's kind of a very hit or miss director, and I thought this one was actually pretty good. Like, if a movie was going to get a Paul W.S. Anderson treatment, this is probably one of the better fits for him.
Right, yeah. I'm not too familiar with him. I mean, now I am, thank you. But I didn't know he'd done Resident Evil. I actually wanted to mention something about that movie adaptation later as we go on. But yeah, I dare say, I'm not sure, this probably isn't a really, I don't know if this is a controversial statement to make, but I kind of dare say that this Mortal Kombat movie is the best video game movie made. And I say that, unfortunately, with zero nostalgia. It's more just sentiment or a testament, I should say, to how shit video game movies have continued to be. That they still have, because, again, a lot of this comes down to Mortal Kombat knowing its place and the time it was made, not taking itself seriously, the things we aforementioned. But it's like, they just, the video game movies have been horrible. So it's not like that huge of a statement to make. I just think it peaked in the sense that it stayed true to what it was. Unlike, Resident Evil, which I don't take any bones with. Like, I'm not on some nerddom right now. Like, how could they do that to the source material? And what a gallery of rogues, am I right? No, sorry. With Resident Evil, it's like, it wasn't even anyone's fault. The fact they had to make that into a movie was the problem. Like, they lost before they started, because Resident Evil didn't have a whole lot of character development or story in general. I mean, I'm kind of sorry to say, but it basically was a movie about zombies and survival, and or a game about zombies and survival. And so it's like, just make a movie about that. You make another zombie survival movie, but when you put Resident Evil on the bill, then fans of the game are going to be pissed, and people who don't even know the game are going to be left with like a sloppy mess of a film.
Well, that's why I kind of think Mortal Kombat really works, is because it was such a simple story as a game. Like, it really was just they had stakes, So it had a little bit more stakes than something like Street Fighter, where it's just sort of like they're fighting in a tournament. Each character has their own motivations for wanting to beat up M. Bison. Like, that's the story of Street Fighter 2. Mortal Kombat is more of, I'm not sure how much of this was really established at the time Mortal Kombat 1 came out, but by the time the movie came out, Mortal Kombat 2 was already out. And I know by Mortal Kombat 2, they definitely established that there was this whole thing about, like, when they win enough tournaments that against the Earth, then they'll take over the Earth or something like that, right? There's some sort of stakes to it. And it's not just who wants to beat up the bad guy. So, and I kind of think that, this isn't like a blanket rule, because obviously Street Fighter 2 kind of didn't do very well. I mean, that's a whole other story. It turned out to be a fun movie in hindsight, but not at the time that it came out. It's objectively not that great. But Mortal Kombat is kind of, because it had such a thin story to begin with, it kind of lends itself for the movie to flesh it out a little bit the way they want, right? As opposed to taking a movie that's really rich in story and has like hundreds of hours of plot that you have to condense into 2.
Right.
You're going to lose so much out of the experience of, 40-hour game of, plot and story, compared to if you have like, well, here's a simple idea, let's turn this into something.
Yes, no, that's well put. And I think I kind of thought about this as well, and it made me almost conclude that it's a bit ironic or strange that Mortal Kombat really does stand as one of the best video game movies made, again, in my opinion. But it's almost strange that it's based off of such a simple game, like one that we would struggle to make an episode out of, because there's no story really. It's it's hard to talk about just fighting for that long, at least for me. But something that's just so thin on story, and they made it into a great movie staying within its boundaries. And then there's other video game movies based on games with, like you said, tens of hours of plot development, and those movies, they never work. In my opinion. I know, kind of being a blanket statement harsh, but there's no interactivity in a movie, and that's kind of when you lose touch with the game it came from. How do you take something that depends on interactivity and make it into a movie? Is really hard. So anyway, Mortal Kombat kind of cracked that code by just taking something simple and having fun with it.
And just a little caveat to my statement that this is the best. I admit I haven't actually seen, I don't think I've seen a video game adaptation in at least 10 years. At least. It's probably a little bit more than that.
That's actually true for me too. Yeah.
So
I'll piggyback on that.
There's stuff now that's coming out which looks interesting, but I haven't gone around to watching it. Like there's that new Tomb Raider that seems to have all the ingredients, but I just haven't actually watched it, so I don't really know. All those movies.
Oh shit, that was actually a really good movie.
Oh, you did see it?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm ruining all my credentials now. Because, that was actually really good. All right, this is the second best video game movie.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that yet. And I haven't seen I can't remember the last, I think literally the last video game adaptation movie I've seen was probably Dead or Alive. And that was, we'll get to that some other time. But, so I'm comparing Mortal Kombat to the game movie adaptations of that era and the era just after. So we're looking at, number one, that era. We've got Street Fighter the movie, which again is a cult following. There's a lot of stuff that we rated it a little bit too harshly at the time that we kind of appreciate a little bit more now. So that's fine. I still wouldn't really call it better than Mortal Kombat the movie though. Then you have like Wing Commander. Then you have Double Dragon. And those were not good movies. I'm sorry.
Yes,
There's nothing you can. And then, the era after that, we went into more of the Uwe Boll type of movies. And, nothing against Uwe Boll outside of his video game movies, but within his video game movies, they were not good. So, I can't comment on anything more recently. And obviously, the nerddom, geekdom, fandom has really taken rise in the last 10 years with the meteoric rise of the MCU. So there's probably a lot more effort and money going into making games to cater to the actual target demographic of video games. Imagine that. But barring that aside, because I haven't actually watched any of that, Mortal Kombat's the best.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat really. I think the only ones I've seen in the last 10 years would be Tomb Raider 2, which was a decent movie. I never played Tomb Raider the game, so if anyone's like hating on me saying it's a good movie for whatever reason, know that I had no attachment to the Laura Croft, situation at all. So I just took it as a decent movie. But I did see the other one I saw in the last 10 years was Assassin's Creed, and that was shit.
Oh, was it? Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of just, it was just underwhelming. Like, if you like the game, you'll be disappointed. If you don't know the game, you'll be disappointed. It was just, bleh, like, it was fine, I guess. I think I fell asleep or turned it off, I'll be honest. But yeah, anyway, just for anyone listening to get a bearing on where I'm coming from, because that's a good point to actually put it in context, as you've just done. But yeah, like you said, comparing it to the movies of its time, all the ones you mentioned, Super Mario Brothers, there's a bunch out there that were, yeah. And then, I'm not sure what's happened from like 2010, whatever onwards, but in the early 2000s, they didn't yet know what they were doing, that's for sure. So yeah, it's campy,
That
gloriousness.
I'm glad you brought up Super Mario Brothers. Not that I want to get too much into that, but it actually did help me sort of put a finger on what made Mortal Kombat succeed where so many others failed. Given that list of the games that came out around that time, including Street Fighter, Mario Brothers, Wing Commander, Double Dragon, stuff like that, Mortal Kombat's the only one that had the decency to actually capture the spirit of the game. Everything else completely defied the spirit of the game. These days there are some people who even actually defend Mario Brothers, saying that, it's actually a pretty decent movie as long as you just don't really think of it as a Mario Brothers movie. That's not supposed to be a defense. You can't say, don't think of it as the game that it's based on. The whole point of that is to be based on that game. Now you can argue, okay, well you can enjoy it for its own merits, and here's, if only they had made it something else, that'd be okay. But as a video game adaptation, you can't say, just pretend it's not based on the thing that it's adapted from.
Right, yeah. Like it failed to be the thing it was supposed to be, a Mario Brothers game. So if think of it that way, you might like it. That's kind of what I was saying about Resident Evil. It's like, just make a zombie movie. Forget about the whole game part. It's not going to work. It's going to make people say things like that. Well, forget that it was Resident Evil. It's still a good zombie flick. Like, nah, swing and a miss, mate.
Once the prerequisite to enjoying an adaptation is that you can't think of it as an adaptation, it fails as an adaptation. Say what you want about a good movie, it's not an adaptation. If like the barrier for entry to enjoying this movie is detaching it from its source.
Yes, exactly. And I appreciate the optimism in people like that. I do, and there is still a point to be made. But for the most part, maybe lead into it by saying, look, I know it was supposed to be a Mario Brothers movie, but it's whatever, however they'd sculpt that sentence.
But I'm also not saying that it needs to be 100% to the source material. Just it has to be connected in some way. Just, I don't like it when people say, this detail was changed and it was like that in the original blah, 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 blah. There's changes that have to be made, but almost by necessity if you're going to adapt. That's why it's called an adaptation. It's being adapted. But you can't also just entirely abandon the source. It doesn't work like that.
But yeah, no, anyway, those are the kind of movies we were getting and continue to get, like, even a little more recently, Prince of Persia. It's just so kind of always a bit of a disappointment. And my point in that was, I forgot in Mortal Kombat, what's is it Raiden? The guy with the white eyes?
The Thunder God is Raiden, yeah.
Raiden. So, what they did, I thought they did really well, was that instead of making it a really messy movie with like getting lost in developing all the characters for 45 minutes and then trying to close it out quickly with a few big fights, and it didn't get too sloppy, because it was kind of like fight scene, Raiden talks, fight scene, Raiden talks, fight scene, Raiden talks. They kept it pretty focused on how the game was. Not a lot of bullshit, a lot of the silly fight scenes. I just they stuck with, like you said, they stuck with how the game was presented to us really, really well. I know it's a silly movie and everything like that, and it aged more hilariously than well.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's still enjoyable nonetheless. And I guess it's just odd that such a silly kind of movie is still up there with it. Just goes to really just keeps pointing to me of what a shit job they've been doing with making the movies. And then again, maybe there's just not supposed to be movies, video games. Who knows?
That's the weird thing about Mortal Kombat. It walks this fine line between being both cool, fun, and silly, because there's, I don't know how you can really replicate this, but for instance, there's like there's this one scene where kind of towards the beginning ish of the movie, so Kano's there, and you discover that he's kind of in cahoots with Goro and Shang Tsung, and he's sitting at this big table with like this barbaric feast laid out across him, like all like the all the meats and all the it just looks like this like a barbarian banquet kind of thing, right? And just off to the side, it's even kind of like a little bit washed out. You can't even, it doesn't really stand out. Like, it doesn't really jump at you, but you'll notice if you kind of see at the corner of your eye that off to the side, he has this like little pink cake sitting right next to him. And just little touches like that, I thought just kind of worked, even though they are kind of silly, even though they are kind of like jarring and almost kind of break the immersion, but they kind of still keep you in just for like the humor of it.
Yeah, no, there was such a wacky bananas kind of side to this movie that it plays into what you're saying about not taking themselves too seriously. I think first of all, Johnny Cage is just absolute gold. The whole movie, he's such a gem, such a treat. I think one of the best like slapstick random silliness is he's trying to get out of like a little boat, and he's holding like 15 pieces of luggage, and he just flops face first into the water. And it's a really good visual, despite my dry description of it. It's really funny. And just little things like that. They gave Cage they gave him a Bruce Willis line from Die Hard, where he's like, join the tournament, it'll be fun, everybody's.
Oh yeah,
that whole bit in Die Hard, they just have straight up Johnny Cage basically recite it. Things like that. I thought they were brilliant.
Mm-hmm. And he plays it really well, and he plays it very much as we kind of imagine Johnny Cage would be. But there's actually a few things that kind of, in order to cast him, they actually went with Brandon Lee initially. I don't know if you happen to remember Brandon Lee.
Yeah, for the Crow and all that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So the only reason why he couldn't be in this movie was because he died from making The Crow.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, so that it's just such a missed opportunity, because once I read about that, my mind was kind of blown. I was like, man, he would have been so good, and he was like this rising star in Hollywood at the time, as being like one of the next big, probably the next big action heroes, action hero actors, and of course he was taken from us way too soon. But that was going to be his next big thing. He was going to be Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat.
That's incredible. He had such hype around him that almost sounds like a step down for him. But that's me looking at the movie now as something that's just kind of funny, whereas at the time it was a big deal. Money, all that went into it. And it's ironic too that you say Brendan Lee, which I didn't know that, but I was going to previously mention that the movie itself, I believe the game. I'm not sure if it was the game or the movie, but one of the two, according to creators, was directly lifted from Enter the Dragon with his father Bruce Lee.
Quite probably, yeah. I mean, you look at a game like that, it's probably a mix between something like Enter the Dragon and Bloodsport.
Right, and I'm thinking that what I read, it was they were talking about the movie Mortal Kombat, not the game. I could be mistaken, but they were saying that they really wanted to draw pretty heavily from Enter the Dragon, to the point where I believe there's actually a few Easter eggs in Mortal Kombat that shout outs to Enter the Dragon. So that's weird. A couple of Bruce Lee connections. It makes sense why his son would be in it, besides being a booming talent at the time. But anyway, I'm as sad as that was. I shouldn't even say that now because of what happened.
Well, I know, but I get what you mean. As sad as that could have been, the actor nailed it. He nailed the part.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But, and one of the great things about this game is that it also remembers to cater to the fans in a good way. Like, there were so many references to the game that were not ham-fisted. Like, they were not, like, this shoehorned in way to just like, hey, look, we played the game too. We note this reference. Look at this. Everything was, like, quite well crafted into it. So
Right. Yeah, dying on spikes. Yeah, there was a lot. You're right.
yeah, so there's like, they obviously they're going to do fatalities and finish him and stuff like that, but there's also the little things like or actually it's not even a little thing, it's kind of a big moment where, Johnny Cage finally, spoilers of course, anyone who hasn't seen this and wants to, there's a finally Johnny Cage goes up and challenges Goro, and it's pretty tense because you're sort of like, well, what the hell's this guy going to do against Goro? And then as soon as the match starts, he immediately drops down and punches him in the balls. And it's like, oh my god, that is the best way to have included that move that he does in the game into the movie, and to make it in a very meaningful way that makes perfect sense and and completely moves the plot forward. Seriously, it was amazing. It blew my mind. I just laughed so hard in the theater because it was just the most perfect way to use a video game reference in a movie.
More than that, a beautiful way to use a dick punch. I mean,
yeah. No, exactly. And it made sense. It made perfect sense to the movie.
It was his only chance. It was beautiful.
And if there's one thing I could ever nitpick on that as a flaw, is that in the actual game, you are not able to dick punch Goro.
I don't know if Goro has a dick in the game. He's very Ken doll-ish.
You might not be able to, but I know that I've tried many times to see if it was possible, and it is impossible. Unless there's some sort of way to hack it, but barring that, there's no, because I think what it is, there's no programmed graphics for him to clutch his balls and go, oh, right? So they probably just said, okay, you can't do that.
Imagine a programmer sitting up all night to hack in a dick punch.
And there's really cool moments. I defy most people to pick, something from any other fighting game, whether it's not a fighting game adaptations. It's something like Street Fighter or I don't even know what else has been made out there other than Dead or Alive. But again, topic for another day. But they had cool moments. They had cool fight anticipation. So there's that obviously they really built up in the movie, and we've already kind of knew was going to happen before the movie that Sonya's going to fight Kano, so they really built that up. So it was this awesome moment when they finally get to fight. There's another moment where Liu Kang is kind of wandering around, and there's a wonderful shot of him next to this archway with some stairs leading up higher than you can see, and you just see these first feet, then legs, and, coming down the stairs, and you see it Sub-Zero. And there's this, the chill just went down my spine. It's like, oh my God, they're going to fight. This is awesome, right? And, just all these little moments that sort of really build up the fights that are going to happen, because they know that's what you're there for. You want to see these characters fight. So they embellish these moments to say okay, here's a cool fight. Liu Kang is going to fight Sub-Zero now. Johnny Cage is going to fight Scorpion now, and so on and so forth. And eventually, Johnny Cage is going to fight Goro, and there are all these awesome moments.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's such a reason why that film nailed it for what it was. The fan service is so important. I think that's something Marvel Cinematic Universe does really well, because they know you're going to take a movie or a character and a hero in that case, and really change it to fit the movie or the universe better, then that's going to upset some fans of the diehard source material kind of fans. But then they done a great job throughout all these years of putting in just enough fan service, enough Easter eggs and counter references to where fans don't feel slighted anymore, and they're like, yeah, they had to do that for the movie, to keep things going. But did you see the part where stuff like that is so important, because then I think it gives the creators so much more room to fuck around, as long as you just throw in little fan service every now and then, which, like you said, this movie did it, because I think they included, on top of that, giving us the fights you want to see, they included every speaking of the dick punch, they included every move in the game, basically, all the trademark moves,
all the signature moves, yeah,
signature, thank you, yeah, you get to see them all in the film, and yeah, it was really cool.
Or at least some sort of a weird variation of it. So I think there's one part where Sonya does the leg toss, but it's not really quite clean, because that would kind of be a little bit of a stretch, but she just kind of kicks up and then drags him down, so it's kind of it's there. And it's okay, no, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. It was the closest an actual human could do kind of thing. I'll take it.
I only kind of wish They did have a scene where Sub-Zero like rips somebody's head off and you see his spine dangling down.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, no, so and no, it was so it was pretty great, and they like kind of incorporated a few elements. Like they borrowed a few characters from Mortal Kombat 2. Reptile, the CGI didn't quite hold up. It wasn't even that great at the time, I'll be honest. Even then, I was kind of like, oh, that's a little bit weird. But
the snake, it was horrible. Yeah, or dragon, whatever that thing was.
Reptile. He's just Reptile.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I fucking all right. Sorry.
Well, that's his name. His name is Reptile.
It's not just a clever name, yeah.
So he's never been depicted as that. As far as Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, Mortal Kombat 2 is the first time they kind of revealed he has a lizard face, but it's quite more literally lizard face rather than this like weird outworldly creature. So it's actually the first time they're kind of, I don't know if it's this might be the only time they've ever depicted him like that, but it was cool because that this was a time when CGI was young, so even if it was kind of crappy, it was still kind of cool to see it. The Liu Kang versus Reptile fight is probably like one of my favorites in the movie, and it was just awesome. And the soundtrack, we have to get to the soundtrack.
Yes, yes, that was it's so perfect. It's such a part of the '90s as a whole.
Yeah,
it's like woven into the loom of the '90s. That's how important that theme song, electronic take on the theme song was, and then all throughout the movie was a lot of electronica that was, well representative of the time and still, kind of holds up all right.
Yeah, no, I would say especially that time in like the early to mid '90s was really about that kind of that techno kind of music, and it was that was definitely of its time. It definitely fits well with the tone and the mood of the movie. I think if you ever mention Mortal Kombat, I think everyone kind of hears that theme in their head. I'm not sure if you can even mention Mortal Kombat without somebody kind of humming it.
Somebody listening just done it right now. They're like, dang.
It is at least stuck in your head, and you're at least going to look it up on YouTube after it, or whatever. You probably already have it somewhere in your personal music player. I'm going to bet everyone's going to start listening to that. They're probably turning us off right now, and so that they can listen to that. So unfortunately I screwed up this episode for us, but I mean, hey, the music's kind of worth it. It's a good soundtrack.
Yeah, no, it really was. It stands out as one of the quintessential, 90s soundtracks. Again, holds up to today. It's just like that song was iconic, and the scream and everything. That and for anyone that's still listening, if you're gonna go download stuff, wait a second, because I got one more recommendation. Go get the Spawn soundtrack. That one was also one of the best '90s soundtracks. The tracks were all made for the movie, and they were half electronica of the time, and then half like a band, like Metallica or Manson or whatever. It was a cool mashup. Just super 90s staples. So there, I might have got one or two of them back for us.
Don't go yet. Don't go yet. Give us another couple minutes to wrap up the episode. We're not wrapping it up yet. We still got a few more things to talk about, I think.
Like when Scorpion throws them things out of his hands, and the CGI shows like a little vagine opening out of his hand for them to come out of. That was a masterpiece of CGI at the time. like seriously, considering anyone listening is gonna run off and look something up after this episode, look that scene up, because that was horrendous but exciting. Like you said, the CGI, we knew at the time it wasn't good, but there wasn't that much CGI in movies yet, so we were just excited to see CGI. We weren't even expecting it to look real as we are now. Then it was just like, I'm just excited to see CGI. Like,
very valid point.
I didn't expect it to be real. It was just like cutting edge and cool, and always
we were like, this is a time where like, hey, let's watch Lawnmower Man. That has computer graphics.
Right, exactly. Oh God,
yeah. I mean, and I guess there is probably a bit of an elephant in the room to address, that the movie did deprive its fans of a proper feud between Sub-Zero and Scorpion, which is probably one like the most fleshed out subplots of the original game. And all I have to say about that is that would have just been another thing to shoehorn into the movie, and I'm kind of glad that they I wouldn't say glad, but I kind of understand why they had to kind of just like push that aside, just be like, no, we need these guys for other purposes.
Yeah, I understand as well because in my observation, I'm could be this is based on opinion anyway, but it seems like Scorpion and Sub-Zero are basically the two most popular characters. You know, that was the most common fight to see amongst your friends. Somebody would have, you know, Sub-Zero and the other Scorpion, and I just think that they had the two, you know, almost coolest powers. Whatever, it'd be hard to really show them off in a film if they had to split the time between themselves. You
Yeah.
know, if they're the two most interesting, that you should be able to kind of see them on exposition one at a time. Was my takeaway for why they didn't anyway.
I just think it didn't really fit. I mean, like, again, it's an adaptation. There's going to be things you have to cut out. There's going to be other things you have to add in for things to make sense. It's, you know, I don't agree with people who think that adaptations have to be like 100% accurate to the source. You know, there's got to be some creative license. And given the story that they wanted to tell, I just don't think that there was enough room to fit in um, something like Sub-Zero versus Scorpion, just because it would have taken too much room. It would have taken too much time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely wasn't something that bothered me. You know, when it was over, you can maybe go into it thinking, I really want to see that, but when it's over, you don't think how you missed it.
I mean, I actually kind of forgot to mention it until about half an hour into this episode, so
Right.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't have
There
been
you go.
upset if they found a way to do it. I just, off the top of my head, can't think of a way that they could have done it well to tell this story. I think the next movie, they actually kind of reintroduced the feud between them. I think they actually had a proper fight between them. But you also kind of see how that second movie turned out, and maybe we have a point that they should have just not done that. The movie that they told here was the three heroes guided by a thunder god to win this tournament. That's they focused on it, and I think it was stronger for them focusing on that story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think again, those two characters could have easily just taken over a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
movie if they didn't play their cards right, which they did. My last kind of thought on it really is that it's a cool movie to go back to. Understanding you'll have to be tongue in cheek about it to enjoy it, of course, but it's cool because it represents kind of the end of an era. It was one of the, you know, I'm being a little dramatic or romanticizing my statement in saying that it was one of the last um like pre CGI takeover high fantasy high action movies.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, nowadays there's a lot of there's CGI where it might be refreshing to not see it, you know, in a similar way that like stop motion is refreshing from animation. It's just, sometimes I miss the Henson, you know, puppet creations and things like that. Like
Yeah.
if you look at again the early Ninja Turtle movies against like CGI stuff, it's, you know, I get it, CGI, and it is superior and gorgeous when done right, but I think that CGI in Hollywood is so spread thin right now. You know, everyone needs it for every film. It was just kind of cool looking back, and again, you know, acknowledging that there was a little CGI in Mortal Kombat, very early CGI, acknowledging that, you know, still looking at like, you know, a lot of the creations that they would have nowadays done with computers, they had to do with, you know, animatronics and, you know, things like that. It was just kind of cool. It was the end of an era before things got really computerized.
Mm-hmm. So just to wrap things up, I think we've pretty much said everything we can about the movie, unless there's anything else you wanted to throw in.
No, that was it.
All right. So I think just to wrap up, I'm just going to say that this episode has actually been a long time coming. This is one that was recommended to me a long time ago by our Patreon, Richard Sampson. Sorry it took so long to get around to it, but just yeah, we're lazy, so that's the only thing I can really say. I know Mortal Kombat is very much a gaming topic, but we are talking about the movie. If you kind of liked the format of talking about things that are slightly more off topic, we're actually, Paul and I have been talking about doing an off topic episode every once in a while, probably roughly about once a month, just on off topic discussions.
Because we got them. Sorry, that was poor follow up.
That was all you were going to say after all of that. That's how we balance this out. That's that's your 50-50.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. I
All right. Well, then Goodbye.
Just keep repeating the thought, I got nothing in my head, and that's all I've got is me saying I got nothing to myself.
All right.
Shit.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye, don't do murder.